Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Contract with a Seal by Kate Aster, narrated by Tanya Eby. Prologue. 23 years ago. A single ray of dawn peeked in through the bottom of the pink shades that covered her window. It didn't wake her. 9-year-old Violet was already wide awake, listening to her parents creep down the stairs on the other side of her closed bedroom door. Rolling over on her side, her eyes rested on the image of her sister Lacey, also 9, in a blissful slumber. Dreaming of the gifts that waited for them downstairs, no doubt, all shiny and colorful, wrapped in full bows. Her parents always had them wrapped at the store, unable to squeeze enough time from their work schedule to do the chore themselves. Vi couldn't really blame them. After all, now that Mom was promoted at the brokerage house and Dad had published his second bestseller on retirement investment planning, they were finally able to start looking for a new house, one with separate bedrooms for her and her sister. Hard work paid off. For kids like Lacey, Vi knew today was the pinnacle of the Christmas season, that treasured morning when they could tear into a pile of gifts and see if their dreams had come true. Lacey would likely get the video gaming system and the collectible doll with the equestrian wardrobe she had asked for, sending her letter to the North Pole, even though she had known the whole thing was bogus for the past 2 years. For Vi, since she hadn't asked for the skateboard she really wanted, the day would simply be a relief. No more holiday parties where she had to stand at her sister's side while their parents paraded them in front of people Vi couldn't even recognize. "She looks so much like you," one person would say about Lacey to their parents. "Lacey has your eyes." "Lacey, you even sound like your mother these days. A few more years and I won't be able to tell the two of you apart." No one meant any harm by the comments. Lacey was, after all, the spitting image of their parents, as her grandparents always put it. And the older Vi got, the less she looked like any of them. She wasn't shooting up in height like Lacey was. Vi's nose turned up too much. Her hair was darker, eyes rounder. Even her lips were getting fuller, meriting the new nickname of Duck Lips from Norman, the third-grade class bully. Every day, Vi looked less a part of the Owens family. Of course, that was because she wasn't part of the family. Not biologically, anyway. Unlike Lacey, Vi was adopted, a fact that never bothered her except when she'd hear the careless comments of adults. Teachers, her parents' co-workers, even the woman at the bank, who had assumed since Lacey and Vi were the same age that they must be fraternal twins. Far from it. But this year, Vi had taken control. Each week, when her parents would give them their $2 allowance if they had done well in school, Vi would save it, while Lacey would spend it on candy or cherry-scented lip balm. Her parents had lavished praise on Vi. And when she asked for a digital calculator for her birthday so that she could have a more efficient lemonade stand this year, they had bragged about her to their friends. And this year at the Owens holiday party, when someone asked what Vi wanted for Christmas, Vi didn't say a peep about the skateboard, instead responding, "I'd like a gold bullion bar," adding something she had heard her mom say on the phone to someone, "because gold's trading at a record low." Heads turned, smiling, laughing, utterly delighted, and Vi was rewarded with words she had never heard before. "Vi, you are just like your parents." "You are just like your parents." Over and over, she said those words to herself this morning, the best present she'd likely received this year, since she certainly would have preferred a skateboard. What was bullion, anyway? Wasn't it that dried yellow powder that Mom put in chicken soup? No matter. She may not look like an Owens, but Vi had found her own way of fitting into the family. Chapter 1. Today. She hated the holidays. Standing in the street, Vi stared down at the bright red envelope with the festive logo at the top of the return address. Recognizing the same cheerful design they used last year, she didn't even have to open it to know what it was, hoping she'd gain some satisfaction when she tore it to bits and tossed it into the recycle can. Slamming the mailbox shut, she laid it back on top of the stack of mail and trudged toward the house. Maeve's cheerful Cape Cod-style home seemed a contradiction to Vi's mood, welcoming her with its bright red door and flag hanging patriotically from the front porch. One thick yellow ribbon was tied to each of the 2 trees in the front yard, one for Maeve's fiancé Jack, and one for Mick, Vi's brother-in-law. Since they were both deployed on SEAL missions, Vi had no idea where they were right now. She only knew they weren't where they were supposed to be. It was the holidays. Shouldn't Jack be here with Maeve and Mick be with Lacey in their new home in San Diego? Such was life in the military. She was only grateful she had the good sense to not fall for someone in uniform like her sister had. Of course, remembering the rat bastard Vi had just divorced, it would have shown more good sense to simply not have fallen for anyone at all. Even with the branches stripped bare and a chilled gray sky looming overhead, Vi's heart warmed a little more with each step toward the house. Sunlight filtered through the naked trees, and the air was saturated by the scent of burning firewood. Vi glanced up at the chimney and noticed a thick trail of smoke headed upwards toward the muted pink clouds. The house was exactly as Lacey had told her it was, a small sanctuary on the Chesapeake Bay. Vi would only be staying here for a couple months while she looked for a condo to buy in D.C., and had promised herself not to get too settled. But even after only having been here a week, she felt herself easing into the casual way of life in Annapolis, a place where people were more interested in what kind of boat you sailed rather than what kind of car you drove. Vi had worried it would be awkward, moving into the room vacated by her sister after Lacey had married Mick a few months ago, and living with Lacey's former housemates, Maeve and Bess, and Bess's toddler, Abigail. But her sister had been right. The cozy waterfront home was much more welcoming than the short-term rentals or executive hotels that Vi had considered as an alternative. And no one could feel awkward too long in this house. It was an easy place to call home. When she opened the door, chaos greeted her in the form of dozens of open cardboard boxes strewn all over the living room floor. Thick garlands of artificial pine and strings of Christmas lights were stretched out across the floor and over the sofa. Ornaments protectively wrapped in yards of bubble wrap sat on the coffee table. Abigail, Bess's daughter, broke away momentarily from the TV and raced up to Vi. "Santa," she said, jubilantly hugging her. Abby was still a child of few words, and it warmed Vi's heart that she would spare one for her. Vi cracked a smile as she set the stack of mail on the console table. "No, I'm not Santa, though I guess I have put on a few pounds the last week. It's all your mom's good cooking." Sitting on the hardwood floor, Bess was unpacking ornaments. "Hardly that. She's just showing off her latest word. How was your day?" "Not bad," Vi answered noncommittally, as Abby toddled back toward the TV, distracted by the sight of Rudolph on the screen. In truth, Vi was growing to hate her new job in D.C. Needing a change from Atlanta after her very public divorce, she had snatched the first opportunity the network had someplace else. She would have gratefully accepted a position in Alaska to get away from her ex. Fortunately, though, there wasn't much of a need for a financial correspondent that far north. Vi turned, taking in the complete disarray around her. "Are you two seriously putting up Christmas decorations? It's not even December yet." Holding the top third of an artificial tree in her grasp, Maeve shrugged. "Thanksgiving is over, so it's fair game. Besides, this house needs some holiday cheer," she countered. And seeing as this was Maeve's first holiday season without Jack in quite a while, there was no way Vi was going to object. "This is late by my standards. I think we should put them up the day after Halloween. That's when the stores do it. Why can't we?" Bess handed Vi a wreath. "Can you hang this on the inside of the front door?" "Shouldn't it go on the outside of the door?" "Not that one. We've got a different one for the outside." Of course they'd have more than one wreath, Vi thought, as she hung the adorned circle of pine. From the look of all these boxes, it seemed like they had enough wreaths for every door in the neighborhood. Bess looked at her inquisitively. "When did you and Lacey put up decorations in your house when you were growing up?" 2 Saturdays before Christmas. We used to get a real tree, and Mom said it would turn into a pile of pine needles by Christmas if we bought it any earlier." Maeve darted a look at Bess. "See?" See what? Bess wanted to get a real tree this year. I'll have to side with Maeve on this one. You'd be worried Abby would be eating pine needles all season. They get everywhere. Even after only being here a week, Vi had already noted that Abby was at that stage when everything seemed to end up in her mouth. I hadn't thought of that. Bess pulled a manger from a box and set it on the console table, taking a quick glance at the stack of mail Vi had left there. Is this today's mail? Yep, Vi responded, unraveling bubble wrap to reveal a glass icicle ornament. Oh, looks like a Christmas card arrived already. Bess's eyes widened as she lifted the red envelope from the pile. No, Vi corrected. It's an invitation. For me. Maeve glanced over. They're finally forwarding your mail? About time it started showing up. Vi hung the ornament toward the top of the tree, away from Abby's inquisitive young reach. Yeah, but now I'm wishing it hadn't. Why? What is it? Sitting back down on the sofa, Vi pulled off her heels. Just an invitation to the annual Financial Correspondence Gala in D.C. Sounds fun, Maeve said, instantly distracted by Vi's heels, now lying on the floor. Oh, hey, are these new? Can I borrow them? Yes to both questions. Bess eyed Vi. So why is that a bad thing? The invitation, I mean. It's kind of one of those see and be seen events in my business. I used to love going, but this year... Vi had practically done backflips the first time she was invited a few years ago. Then, last year she had attended with Josh, an influential producer who just happened to be her new husband. Now, the sight of the invitation caused her stomach to roil. Maeve sat next to her. Oh, Dickwad will be there. Is that it? Nothing like an ex-husband to spoil the party. Vi smiled. Maeve had the endearing habit of always replacing Josh's name with a more colorful epithet. It's not just that Josh will be there. It will be a ballroom of about 300 people who know that he was cheating on me. Half of them were at the wedding, you know. And when it broke up only a few months later, it practically made headlines. Vi massaged her aching feet. It was all over Twitter. Someone even started a hashtag for me. #JiltedVi. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? In the weeks after Josh very publicly apologized for cheating on his new wife, Vi's life had become a train wreck no one wanted to take their eyes off of. But everyone took your side, Bess reminded her. You said you gained at least 15,000 Twitter followers off of it. Yeah, and got 17 marriage proposals, too. Weird world we live in. A dull pressure built behind Vi's eyes from the memory. Some people, like her, simply weren't ready to lead a public life. At the pinnacle of her career, Vi had always pictured herself behind a desk managing financial investments for a fund, or helping families to better prepare for retirement, maybe writing a financial book like her father, watching it leap to the top of the bestseller list. She hadn't pictured her face on a TV screen covered in cake makeup and sharing her personal life with hundreds of thousands of viewers. If I show up at that gala alone, I'll be jilted Vi again before the night is over. There's no way I can go. Bess nodded, as Abigail plopped onto her lap to show her a shiny ornament. You're right. Skip it. You left Atlanta to get away from all that. This is a fresh start for you. Or, Maeve's voice trailed, you could go with a date. Someone really hot to show them all that you aren't jilted anymore. A face popping into her mind, Vi pondered as she unwrapped another ornament, until she finally spoke. I do know this producer in New York who might be available. He's pretty good-looking, and probably looks even better in a tux. He's kind of a friend. Vi used the word friend loosely, as she always did. Vi had business associates, not friends. Even her housemates, as wonderful as they were more Lacey's friends than her own, taking on Vi as a sympathy case, like a lost dog looking for a temporary home. It had always been that way. No, not another producer, Maeve curled up her nose. Everyone will be comparing him to your ex. You need a showstopper. Someone everyone will notice. Vi raised her eyebrows. And where do I find this guy? An escort service? I won't completely discount that option, but do you know anyone who's not connected to TV or the financial world? Vi shrugged. Not really. I don't get out much. I work, I sleep, I work some more. The grin growing on Maeve's face seemed to have been caught by Bess as she chimed in. Think, Vi, someone hotter than molten lava? Maeve sent Bess a wink. And can make a girl's panties sizzle. She finished for her, sharing a conspiratorial look. Vi stared at them. I'm drawing a blank. Shaking her head, Bess hung a homemade ornament on the tree. She's hopeless. And coming from a single mom who hasn't had a date in 2 years, that's really saying something. Joe, Vi? Maeve's voice dripped with exasperation. Joe Shey. You danced all night with him at Lacey's wedding. Remember? Remember? How could Vi forget him? But it was the worst idea she'd heard since she had considered marrying her producer. Maeve, seriously? Joe? He'd never go to this with me. We haven't even kept in touch since that night. You lost touch with him? Maeve said in disbelief, firing a look to Bess. You're right, Bess. She is hopeless. Bending over, Bess collected heaps of bubble wrap and scrunched them into an empty box. You didn't even email the guy? Vi shook her head. God, no. Why would I? I practically made an ass of myself that night with him. Language. Bess's eyes widened, glancing over at Abby, who was enraptured by a singing Rudolph on the television. Vi winced. Sorry. All ears, Maeve sat on the sofa. How? What happened? Nothing. Literally nothing. I drank too much, practically propositioned him, and all he did was drive me safely back to my hotel. Bess grinned. Aw, that's sweet. How was that sweet? Do you know what it was like pressing myself against that rock-hard body of his on the dance floor all night, and then basically getting a pat on the head at the end of the night? Standing, Maeve pressed a hand to her hip. Yeah, how dare he be a gentleman, son of a... Maeve! Bess cut her off, pointing to the toddler sitting in a pile of pillows on the floor. Gun. I was going to say gun. Geez, have a little confidence in me. Eyeing an unopened cardboard box, Bess began to dig into it. Seriously, think about it. By your own admission, you were 3 sheets to the wind on champagne. She stooped over and pulled out a snowflake ornament. And shots, Vi confessed. Lacey had walked down the aisle only days after Josh had told her he was leaving her for someone else. It might have been Joe Shey Vi had been dancing with, but Jack Daniels had been the man she was most interested in that night. It was a rough night for me. So, all the more reason for him to not take advantage of you. He was being nice. How refreshing. Did he give you his number? Yes, but only so I'd call him the next morning. He offered to pick me up and drive me to my car since I was too drunk to drive it to the hotel. And I take it you didn't call? No, I called a cab. Sighing, Maeve stretched to reach the top of the tree and attach a gold glitter-covered star. Okay, so let's put the past behind us and move on. If it comes up, you just tell him you never called because you were still reeling from the divorce. But it won't come up. Why? Because I'm not calling him. Still struggling to attach the star, Maeve stole a quick glance over her shoulder. Picture it, Vi. He's just what you need. You walk into that gala on Joe Shey's arm, and not one person will even remember you got divorced. They'll all be saying, Josh who? Yeah, him in uniform with all those shiny medals on his chest, surrounded by a bunch of guys in boring tuxes. Everyone will want to talk to him. A baby Jesus in her grasp, Bess glanced down at the nativity scene. Guys, aren't there 3 wise men? Yeah, there's 3 there. No, this is a shepherd boy. It's a wise man. Vi stood up to take a look. She's right. Looks more like a shepherd boy. No wonder it was on sale. Maeve shrugged. Anyway, Joe would have everyone eating out of the palm of his hand. He's a great conversationalist. So many stories to tell, and he just knows so much. We went on a date once, and he really blew my mind. Vi's eyes widened. You dated him? Only once. I was already eyeball deep in love with Jack at the time, but too stupid to admit it yet. Maeve frowned one last time at the nativity, and then looked at Vi. You have to at least call him. Worst he can say is no. Vi plopped back onto the couch. I don't even have his number anymore. I have it, Maeve offered. Of course. Vi should have expected that. I don't have anything to wear then. Maeve cocked her head. We'll go shopping. Cut the excuses, spineless. Call the guy. You guys aren't going to let up unless I do, are you? Maeve and Bess answered in unison. Nope. Vi sighed, suddenly realizing why she had lived so many years without roommates. Okay, get me his number. The early winter wind chilled his sweat-soaked body as it gusted off the Atlantic Ocean. Joe's feet hammered the ground, while the sand that had slipped into his running shoes sliced into his feet. It was damn uncomfortable, but Joe couldn't have imagined a better way to spend his Friday evening. Most tourists had departed Virginia Beach for destinations further south by now, and Joe was grateful for the solitude and for the long expanse of good running sand that stretched out in front of him. It was harder to run in sand than on pavement, a better workout for his body and better preparation for future deployments to the Middle East. A pod of dolphins broke the surface of the water alongside him, and he raced them for about a half-mile, till they disappeared again beneath the waves. The ocean had called to him tonight, and it was during evenings like this he nearly regretted becoming a SEAL, because so many of his missions were landlocked. Every once in a while he imagined what his life might have been if he had eyed a position on a naval vessel, captaining a frigate or eventually an aircraft carrier. But the SEALs were where he was most needed by his country, being a man who never shied away from a firefight or a rescue mission when the need arose. And after countless deployments and commands, there was no turning back on the course that he had laid out for himself since the day he had decided to follow in his father's footsteps and attend the U.S. Naval Academy. He loved the water, watching the waves crash against the sand. There was only one view he wanted to look at more in his life, and, as he had done so many times before, he called the image forward in his mind with its lush green leaves and sweet scented air, just long enough to put a little more power behind his steps. Then the image vanished as quickly as it had appeared, a dream meant for a different day, a different year. The brisk air chilled his lungs almost painfully as he drew in fast and steady breaths. The sting energized him as he ran, feeling liberated, miles from the base where people recognized him, saluted him, or were always somehow hell-bent to intrude upon his peaceful evening. Here he was just Joe Shey, runner. Till he felt his phone buzz in his pocket. He stopped abruptly. Damn it. He hated that he even had to carry a phone on his runs. Couldn't he have a few moments just to himself? But that was the life of a SEAL commander. He was on call 24/7. Glancing at the phone, he frowned, not recognizing the number.
Joe Shey.
Joe, hi, it's Vi. Vi Owens. I don't know if you remember me. We, danced at Lacey and Mick's wedding. Maeve gave me your number. Joe nearly laughed at that statement. How could he, or any man, forget Vi Owens? At the wedding, he recognized her immediately as one of those talking heads on some of the financial shows he'd watch when his schedule allowed. But it was the way that red bridesmaid dress silhouetted her body, and the feel of her softness pressed up against him as they danced that night, that had etched Vi Owens into his libido for eternity. But dancing was all Joe would allow himself to do with the sultry financial correspondent. Strike one. Vi was the sister-in-law of someone he had once commanded on more than a few SEAL missions. Strike two. According to Mick, She was newly divorced and vulnerable as hell. Strike 3. Vi had been drinking like a sailor on an overseas liberty, and her judgment was severely hampered. Vi Owens was off limits to him for the night, whether he liked it or not. But God, just the fleeting memory of her was all it took to heat every square inch of his body against the wind's biting breeze.
Of course I remember you. How are you, Vi?
I'm fine. After several commands, Joe had learned how to read people well. An untimely pause, the strain of a tone, a jagged breath were all good indicators that Vi wasn't fine at all at this moment. "How are you?" she finally asked.
Great. Enjoying a run along the beach right now.
"Oh, I can call back some other time," she said quickly. Too quickly. Curiosity overtaking him, Joe started walking for the benches along the boardwalk. Strange that she had waited 5 months to call him, and now was rushing to get off the phone.
No, I was just finishing up,
he said, sitting down to one of the best views in Virginia Beach.
How are things in Atlanta?
Vi let out an awkward laugh. I wouldn't know. The network offered me a transfer to D.C. I'm living in the house where Lacey used to live. You know, the house where the wedding was? I'll be here a few months while I shop for a condo.
That's great. How's Maeve holding up with Jack gone?
Hanging in there. She's really keeping busy with work.
And Lacey?
It's hard, but she's doing okay. She's enrolled in a psychology master's program in San Diego and says it keeps her mind off things.
Good for her. There's a good support network out there for her, too. Make sure she gets involved with the other team wives and doesn't hole up in their home for the duration. Is she coming back to Annapolis for the holidays?
Actually, we both went to our parents in Chicago for Thanksgiving. But Lacey said she wants to stay in California this Christmas. You know, on the off chance Mick shows up on her doorstep. I think she's seen too many of those YouTube reunion videos. Any idea whether that might actually happen?
He's on a different team now, so I'd have no clue. And if I did...
I know. You'd have to shoot me if you told me. Joe laughed.
Kind of like that. I guess you hear that a lot these days.
Yes, from Mick and Jack. I don't know why any woman would fall for a guy like you.
I can't disagree with you there,
Joe agreed. With 2 ex-wives and no interest in acquiring a third, Joe had already decided that SEALs were a hard bunch to settle down with. Some seemed to make it the distance, but others, like his sorry marriages, weren't strong enough to make it around the first lap.
How are you liking Annapolis?
It's different. So quiet. People here are really laid back. I better find someplace in D.C. fast, or I'll start to adjust. Joe's eyes drifted to the choppy horizon as a trio of seagulls dove for their dinner.
Once you get used to living on the water like that, you'll never be able to get it out of your blood.
Yeah. She cleared her throat after an awkward pause. Listen, I'll cut to the chase. About time. A half-smile perked upwards on Joe's face. He had a feeling Vi was always one to cut to the chase. Even at the wedding, small talk didn't seem to be her forte. I kind of need a favor, Joe. He stretched his legs in front of him, picturing her for a moment, biting one of those marvelous lips of hers nervously as she held her cell to her ear. Even in memory, Vi Owens was a sight.
No problem. What can I do?
She let out a feeble laugh. Don't say that till I tell you what I need.
Usually when people need something from me, I have to arm myself with an HK-416 and ship out for 3 or 4 months. There aren't too many favors that I can't handle.
The pause on the other end of the phone was lengthy, but Joe let the silence prevail until she finally spoke up again. I need a date. She nearly stuttered the last word. A date to a correspondence gala. It's black tie, a good meal, and lots of painfully boring speakers. I go every year. Again, Vi's image came to mind. Long legs, sultry lips, and the kind of long dark curls men just want to wrap around their fingers. Finding a date shouldn't be so hard for Vi Owens that she'd practically stammer the invitation.
And you're asking me,
he specified, lowering his chin slightly. Yes, it's in 2 weeks on Saturday night. I know it's a long drive up here, but I'll cover your hotel room.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?